Now here is a practical technique. The first thing you do, you must know exactly what you want in this world. When you know exactly what you want, make as lifelike a representation as possible of what you would see and what you would touch and what you would do and physically moving in such a state. For example, suppose I wanted a home, but I had no money, but I still know what I want. Without taking anything into consideration, I would make as lifelike a representation of the home that I would like, with all the things in it that I would want. And then, this night, as I would go to bed, I would, in a drowsy, sleepy state, the state that borders upon sleep, I would imagine that I am actually in such a house, that were I to step off the bed, I would step upon the floor of that house. Were I to leave this room, I would enter the room that is adjacent to my imagined room in that house. And while I am touching the furniture and feeling it to be solidly real, and while I am moving from one room to the other in my imaginary house, I would go sound asleep in that state. And I know that in a way I could not consciously devise, I would realize my house. I have seen it work time and time again. If I wanted promotion in my business, I would ask myself what additional responsibilities would be mine were I to be given this great promotion. What would I do? What would I say? What would I see? How would I act? And then in my imagination, I would begin to see and touch and do and act as I would outwardly see and touch and act were I in that position. If I now desired the mate of my life, were I now in search of some wonderful girl or some wonderful man, what would I actually find myself doing that would imply that I have found my state? For instance, suppose now I was a lady. One thing I would definitely do, I would wear a wedding ring. I would take my imaginary hands, and I would feel the ring that I would imagine to be there. And I would keep on feeling it until it seemed to me to be solidly real. I would give it all the sensory vividness I am capable of giving anything. And while I am feeling my imaginary ring, which implies I am married, I would sleep. This story is told us in the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. It is said, "At night on my bed, I sought him whom my soul loveth. I found him whom my soul loveth, and I would not let him go until I brought him into my mother's house, right into the chamber of her that conceived me." If I would take that beautiful poem and put it into modern English, into practical language, it would be this. While sitting in my chair, I would feel myself right into the situation of my fulfilled desire. And having felt myself into that state, I would not let it go. I would keep that mood alive, and in that mood I would sleep. That is, taking it right into my mother's chamber, into the chamber of her that conceived me. You know, people are totally unaware of this fantastic power of the imagination. But when man begins to discover this power within him, he never plays the part that he formerly played. He doesn't turn back and become just the reflective life. From here on in, he is the affecter of life. The secret of it is to center your imagination in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain therein. For in our capacity to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled lies our capacity to live the more abundant life. Most of us are afraid to imagine ourselves as important and noble individuals, secure in our contribution to the world, just because at the very moment that we start our assumption, reason and our senses deny the truth of our assumption. We seem to be in the grip of an unconscious urge which makes us cling desperately to the world of familiar things and resist all that threatens to tear us away from our familiar and seemingly safe moorings. But I appeal to you to try it. If you try it, you will discover this great wisdom of the ancients, for they told it to us in their own strange, wonderful, symbolical form. But unfortunately, you and I misinterpreted their stories and took it for history when they intended it as instruction to simply achieve our every objective. You see, imagination puts us inwardly in touch with a world of states. These states are existent, they are present now, but they are mere possibilities while we think of them. But they become overpoweringly real when we think from them and dwell in them. You know, there's a wide difference between thinking of what you want in this world and thinking from what you want. Let me tell you, when I first heard of the strange and wonderful power of the imagination, it was in 1933 in New York City. An old friend of mine taught it to me. He turned to the 14th of John, and this is what he read. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. He explained to me that this central character of the Gospels was human imagination. That mansion was not a place in some heavenly house, but simply my desire. If I would make a living representation of the state desired, and then enter that state and abide in that state, I would realize it. At the time, I wanted to make a trip to the island of Barbados in the West Indies, but I had no money. He explained to me that if I would that night, as I slept in New York City, assume that I was sleeping in my earthly father's house in Barbados, and go sound asleep in that state, that I would realize my trip. Well, I took him at his word and tried it. For 1 month, night after night, as I fell asleep, I assumed I was sleeping in my father's home in Barbados. At the end of my month, an invitation from my family came, inviting me to spend the winter in Barbados. I sailed for Barbados the early part of December of that year. From then on, I knew I had found this Savior in myself. The old man told me that it would never fail. Even after it happened, I could hardly believe that it would not have happened anyway. That's how strange this whole thing is. On reflection, it happens so naturally. You begin to feel or to tell yourself, well, it would have happened anyway. And you quickly recover from this wonderful experience of yours. It never failed me if I would give the mood, the imagined mood, sensory vividness. I could tell you unnumbered case histories to show you how it works. But in essence, it's simple. You simply know what you want. When you know what you want, you're thinking of it. That is not enough. You must now begin to think from it. Well, how could I think from it? I am sitting here, and I desire to be elsewhere. How could I, while sitting here physically, put myself in imagination at a point in space removed from this room and make that real to me? Quite easily. My imagination puts me in touch inwardly with that state. I imagine that I am actually where I desire to be. Now, can I tell that I am there? There is only one way to prove that I am there. For what a man sees when he describes his world is as he describes it relative to himself. So what the world looks like depends entirely upon where I stand when I make my observation. So if, as I describe my world, it is related to that point in space I imagine that I am occupying, then I must be there. I am not there physically, no, but I am there in my imagination, and my imagination is my real self. And where I go in imagination and make it real, there I shall go in the flesh also. When in that state I fall asleep, it is done. I have never seen it fail. So this is the simple technique on how to use your imagination to realize your every objective.
I bring before my mind's eye a scene which would imply that I am the one that I want to be, or that my friend or others are as I would like them to be. I try to confine it within the framework of the golden rule, that is, doing unto others what I would love them to do unto me, and not to go outside of that rule. It's such an easy thing to practice. Would I like the good that I ask of them? Yes. Like it for myself? All right, then ask it for them. Bring them before your mind's eye and dare to assume that what you are seeing in your mind's eye is true. Now there is a definite technique to it. A simple technique. If I can share with you what I do, and it works, I bring them into my mind's eye and I work myself up into an emotional state. It's like a peculiar rhythm. I breathe in and breathe out and breathe in and breathe out, and suddenly I reach a certain point, and then one deep inhalation as though I'm setting it up in a time exposure before my own mind. I set it up and all of a sudden I have a deep inhalation and every pore of my being explodes. And then I do nothing beyond that. It's taking that scene and setting it up in a time explosion before the eternal event. And then I explode it and then let life develop it. And life develops it. And then I get the call, or I get the wire, or I get a letter confirming that which I did. And I do nothing to make it so. I simply believe implicitly in Jesus Christ, but I have found him. I have found him as my own wonderful human imagination. I believe that all things are possible to him. He has ways and means that the mortal mind knows not of. So I do not care if I do not see clearly how it could possibly be. It makes no difference to me. I simply bring it to my mind's eye what I want to see it clearly, explode it, and then let it be. Now it could be tomorrow. It could be a month. It could be even years. I am not concerned. I have done it, and that's all that matters as far as I'm concerned. Everything has its own appointed hour. See the vision? That was my vision. The vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens. It will flower. If it be long, wait. It is sure, and it will not be late. A little chicken, 21 days. A man, 9 months. A horse, 12 months. A little lamb, 5 months. And there's a time interval between that impregnation and the actual embodiment of that state. And I do not know the time intervals. I only know that all I do it. And if that time interval is a day, well, it's a day. If it's going to be a month, let it be a month. I do not know the time intervals between my vision of you being the one that you want to be and you becoming that which I have assumed that you are. I do not know the time interval. But there are time intervals between the impregnation and the birth of that impregnation. But I tell you, it works. So I do not need to ask anyone or turn to anyone. Not that I am not saying to you, turn to me, if you have confidence that I can use a law that you are not yet aware of or feel that you cannot quite master it. I invite you to turn to me. Cost you nothing. I charge not one nickel for it. To me, it's a simple technique, a simple process, and I look upon it just as this. If this hand is itching now, and the back of the hand is itching, this hand is easier for me to use to scratch it and relieve the itch than to take this and try to reach it with my fingers. I can't get back and reach it, but I can get it with this. It's the same body, so I call upon myself. If you cannot yourself, I would say, alleviate the itch may be for money, the itch may be for recognition, the itch may be for something. Well, then ask the one in whom you have confidence. If you have confidence in the speaker, all right, ask me. I tell you, I don't charge. I do not charge 1 penny, neither do I accept any money. I don't. You simply, if you feel like it, you ask me. And I will, to the best of my ability, simply feel within myself that things are as you desire them to be, providing it comes within the code of what I call my ethical code. That it is not at the expense of another aspect of my being. Don't ask me to hurt anyone in this world, because I could not. I would not ask anyone to be hurt. But if you want recognition in this world, you want money in this world, you want comfort in this world, I see nothing wrong in that, because these things I would want for myself. So I put them within the frame of the golden rule and ask for them. It's a simple, simple technique. So let us discuss how things are brought into being. Well, how are they brought into being? By your own wonderful imaginal acts. That's how they're brought into being. Because your imagination is God. Your imagining, that is God in action. Do you know what you would love for yourself and for your loved ones in this world? Assume that you have it. And that assumption, though at the moment, is denied by your senses, denied by reason. If you persist in it, because you believe in Him, it will harden into fact. And no power in the world can stop it. It can't stop it. But I can tell you the interval of time between your assumption and its hardening into fact. But I promise you from experience, it will harden into fact. But do it in love. May I tell you? Whenever you are in doubt, do the loving thing, and you've done the right thing. If ever in doubt, ask a very simple question. Would I like it done to me? If you can answer in the affirmative, then do it. And you cannot go wrong if you use that as your guide. Now, before we go into the silence, let me once more try to explain this simple, simple technique. You will have to practice it and use your own rhythm. You don't have to be in church to do it. You can be sitting here tonight. You can be at home listening to nice music. You can be simply relaxing with a drink. It doesn't matter what you're doing and where you are, but want to do it. Get into a lovely, quiet, relaxed frame. No so-called holy attitude. Forget that. You're holy when you're in love. God is love. So you would love it for someone else. That is all that you need. That mood. Wouldn't it be wonderful if she actually had it? If he had it? If they had it? Also, you know exactly what you want now. And then you imagine you are seeing them. You can see them in your mind's eye and see them vividly. And then breathe yourself into a rhythm. They're telling you that they have it. And you're getting yourself worked up emotionally because they're telling you that they have exactly what you know they would want in this world. And then you reach a certain point and you explode. Something actually goes out of you. It's power. You work yourself up into a certain emotional state and then suddenly you explode. And you feel everything go out. And you cannot repeat it. There's no desire to repeat it. It was an actual psychic, sexual act. But there's no physical act. There is no evidence of any physical act. But it's the same thrill that you would were it a physical act. Work yourself right up into that state and then let it go. And do not raise one finger to make it so, any more than you would after impregnation. What can you do after pregnancy is taking place? Nothing. Leave it alone and let it take place in its own good time. Now let us go into the silence.